Welcome, everyone, to the Motyv podcast. My name is Shaden Bertnoli. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am the founder and owner of Motyv, a company focused on liberating men. And, gosh, what a journey it's been. Motyv is it's a therapy practice, but it's also transitioning over into a full-fledged men's mental health place and brand. And I'm so excited about that. And one of my main focuses, is to help men with pornography, and I'm loving this. I'm reading this amazing book, and I felt very directed by God as of late to build a program for men, really to just help with pornography, and that's coming along really well. So look for announcements on that. Hoping to start a cohort of 10 men who want to follow with me throughout, to come with me for a year and commit to really shattering and liberating themselves from pornography, but also to become men who lead. One of the phrases that's come to my mind with this is when people ask me what I'm doing, I've said, in all reality, I feel like I'm helping men who struggle with lust and helping them to turn and learn how to lead. So guiding men from lusting to leading. And I can feel it in my soul. And I know, men, you need it. I know there's so many of you guys who need to lead your families. You need to lead your own life. You need to lead others. People are looking to you. You have aspirations. You have goals. And you're dragging this anchor with you. And you're trying to change it. You're trying to battle it. But in all reality, you need to take it more seriously and totally transform your life. And I think a lot of men, you struggle to really accept that fact that if you're going to break this, guys, you have to transform your life. You don't just kind of like get over it. There has to be a radical change. And so that's what we're going to do. And my hope is that throughout the entire year, that I create more and more cohorts of men who can go through this together, build a brotherhood, face their shame together, face their embarrassment, face all the things they need to face together, build some really good friendship, and invest in a result. Therapy is an interesting model, right? Therapy is an interesting model. People, when they come to therapy, they are paying for time. So they're swapping money for time. And although, yes, that's the service industry, in most cases in life, you invest in your results, right? You don't go to Hawaii for you're not just paying for time per se. You're paying for an experience that you're hoping for, and you also there's a result that you want. Why do you buy a treadmill? Same thing. There's a result that you want. Well, the therapy world's really interesting because our therapists aren't really held accountable to the result. It's not that it's our job to give you, or I would say, make sure the result happens. How do I say that? My job is to do the best I possibly can to guide you to the result that you truly want. And I think that oftentimes that outcome isn't even talked about in therapy, sadly. It's not even looked at. And so lately has been a powerful feeling for me. Men deserve an absolute quality, powerful program to help them. And I have it. And so it's coming, I would say mid-February is when I'm going to start my first cohort. And so if you're interested, let me know and we can do a call together to make sure you're a right fit, because it's going to be focused and intense. There's no halfway, doing this. So anyway, I wasn't intending on sharing all that, but it just came out. So I think I'm going to leave it there because it needed to be said. And so, as I'm thinking about this podcast today, the question came to my mind: what holds men captive? If I feel like I'm here to liberate the captive, and so especially with men, I know that there's so many things in your life that hold you captive, and the first thing that came to my mind was shame. I've had many conversations in these last couple weeks about shame. I think I have a firm understanding of shame, and maybe some controversial looks at shame in some ways. Then I think shame is if we go very elementary, shame is the idea that you'll hear it a lot said that you do something bad, that thing is bad, and you would feel guilt. Shame is like you do something bad and you start believing that you are bad, and that means now you're feeling shame. And so there's kind of this one size fits all, I guess, look at shame. And I think it's kind of dangerous because in our society, I think we've become really anti-shame. when think about it, shame, it plays a role. And if I really stand for something, right? If I value honesty so much, and I lie to my wife and do something that's totally against that value, that trait, I absolutely will feel shame, not just guilt. Like, it's to the intensity that I think of guilt and shame almost on this intensity scale in a lot of ways too. And so what I want to do today is I want to delineate some things. Okay. I want to separate shame into what I think are like three nuances that maybe the average person doesn't really understand, or I would even say many people don't understand, including some, I would say, therapists. So let's start with the first one. So shame, let's talk about shame as an emotion, kind of like I was just saying. So you do something that goes against what you stand for, and naturally you are going to feel shame. At least, well, you should. And I've had experiences in my office before where somebody has told me to my face that they were unfaithful to their spouse. Their spouse didn't know about it, and they were telling me, and I remember that they weren't there was very little remorse at all. And I remember thinking, like, this is a bit concerning. And then I've had other people come in, and they share it to me, and they're not on the floor in the fetal position, but they're on the couch, like in a place of like serious regret and shame. And you think about the difference, right? What is that? The first person, what does that really say they stand for? What do they care about? It's a little bit up to question, to be honest. I'm not giving them a final judgment on their character, but when you look at what it could say about the character traits that they're standing for right now, you could almost say, well, I don't know. I don't know necessarily what they stand for per se. Whereas a second person, they probably value fidelity to their core almost. They value commitment. They value their family. They value so many things. And the decision to behave in a way that goes against that, it just rocks you. And you're going to feel this shame. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. He wouldn't, like, if that was a guy in my office and if I said, are you feeling guilt or shame? He wouldn't say guilt. Like, he might say, I don't know, I think there's some guilt, but I just feel this like this shame of like, I acted in a way that I don't say I am. I went against who I betrayed myself and her. And so there's one nuance. Okay. So one nuance is shame is emotion. We have to look at it just in that lane for the point of this podcast. Number two nuance, let's look at shame through the lens of a state of being or a state of belief. And so you take this situation of this guy, and he's done something very, very, very painful and betrayed himself, betrayed his wife, feels shame, but then it starts to become this thing you really believe, and it's beyond emotion. It's hard to describe, because joy, you could say joy is an emotion, but typically how I define emotion, you can tell the difference between joy and a state of being in my opinion, by its duration. So emotions come and go. Emotions, they come and go. They're supposed to. But when you come to a state of being, when you feel like, if you have genuine love for someone else or compassion, I hope you're hearing what I'm saying. Like, compassion, you could almost say it's like when you're in it, it's almost like not just an emotion. Like, yeah, there's emotion, but it's more of this powerful state of being. It's more infused within your whole body, and it shows in itself in your character, in your eyes, in your behaviors, what you're doing, and it often is long lasting, and you can tap into it. So it's almost like becoming more of a trait, right? And so, which I've never said before, that actually makes a little more sense. Where, yeah, state of being, a trait, that makes sense actually. So then shame, when we look at it from the other nuance of what happens when shame becomes your trait or this state of being. Okay, so guys, think about this. Most of you guys, you don't even know that it's been a state of being for you for nearly your whole life. And I want you to digest this really slowly, because if it's like a fish that's in water, it doesn't know that it's in water. It just is. It's so used to its environment that that's just like how it is. Most guys have been around shameful parenting, shameful teachers, shameful coaches, shameful uh shameful satanic whisperings into their ear, and also then your own shameful ways that you do. And it's created this, like, that's just how it is. And it's also then becomes this tool for you to motivate yourself in almost everything you do. That's why I love the word motive. It definitely implies, why are you doing what you're doing? And most men, if you're listening to this, and if you're, if you're the wife, or just a female that's listening to this, you need to know that, yeah, you might have shame too. Everyone has it. But I would say men predominantly are actually fueled by it. Whereas I typically see more motivation in women fueled by compassion. Whereas with men, it's like, well, why am I trying to make so much money? It's because there's insecurity with me. It's like I have to, and that have to feeling, that obligation feeling, it's shame, and that's why it burns out, if you will. It leaves you like you're on a treadmill that never gets to get turned off, and it doesn't sustain forever, but it takes from you. Whereas compassionate motivation actually sustains you. So here we go. So we have this idea that emotion, or shame, can be an emotion that comes and goes, and it actually can have a lot of power to it, to help you to change, to help you to understand that you actually do value something, and that you stand for something. It's telling you, hey, you did something that goes against your what you believe in. But then we have this condition that sometimes has been created throughout all of a boyhood, and then into teenage years, and now into adulthood, where shame is the game, and that's like how you are. And you really know it by how you treat yourself when you make mistakes, when you fall short. And then you also know it when you look at why you're doing what you're doing. When you ask yourself, why am I doing this thing? Why am I wearing what I'm wearing? Why am I saying what I'm saying? Am I casting an illusion for people to see me more acceptable than I actually think I am? And so, one thing that I want to say too, joy, and I probably said it before, but I'll say it again. Joy, all emotions have a natural connected behavior to them. So what that means is, you go to a new ice cream, somebody opens a new ice cream, restaurant or whatever, and you go in and they have this new flavor you've never had before. You taste it and it's like unbelievable. Well, because you tasted it and it's so good, you're going to have this little feeling of happiness or joy for a moment, and happiness and joy have a connected automatic behavior with them to share. And so that's why when you go to movies, and when it's just really common to naturally start sharing the things that brought you joy. So shame has more of a bit of an opposite one. So shame's automatic behavior is to hide. So that's why Satan so quickly reminded Adam and Eve, as soon as they partook of the fruit, to go and hide yourself. He wanted to immediately begin the process of shame, and showing them that they are worth less than they thought they were. And that's essentially, again, one of the negative sides of when shame moves from just an emotion to a belief of yourself, and how you view yourself, is that now everything is transactional, and everything is earned, and everything is an increase or a decrease. When I use the word everything, that would mean when you achieve something, or when you don't, or if you do something that could be rejected or not, the way that you behave is filtered through the lens of, does this make me worth more or worth less? And that lens is that shame. And that's what I meant by that state of being, is you're lensing your life, you're viewing your life through a transactional state. And so it ends up burning you out a lot of the time, and you end up making big time mistakes because you're constantly in a state of threat about your worth. So before I move on to the third one, I just had this come into my mind. I haven't thought about this for a while. I want you to think about this. This is this part of shame that's really, I would say, a silent killer, if you will. It's a way of that gets into men that holds you extremely stuck and captive. And that is that shame acts as a false atonement for you. So most men have decent integrity in that when you make mistakes, you want to make them better. You want to do something to make restitution. You want to pay for them. You want to make up for them. Well, let's just take pornography, for example. When you struggle so often with pornography, you can definitely, most men have an experience where they feel like they've asked for forgiveness so many times, and now I'm like this burden to God, and I have to just fix this on my own. I've hurt my wife, or I've hurt other people. Like I have to take care of this on my own. And so when you make a mistake, what happens, right, is there's this integrity that kind of kicks in of like, hey, you must now pay for that. The same way as if you borrowed money from someone, you got to pay him back. And so the problem is when you make a mistake, you don't like, doctrinally speaking, in the gospel of Jesus Christ, he hasn't given us something that we can like pay off sin with. Like, do you realize that? You can't. We have agency, we have the right to choose, but there's not a part of our flesh, there's not a part of our spirit that we know doctrinally that he says, will you please, you have to give me this. And so, but Satan knows you have this infinite worth. So think of infinite like money. So you have this infinite resource to tap into. And so if he can get you to start, okay, if I can get Shaden to make a mistake, and then if I can get him to think that he's burdened Jesus too much, and then if I can get him to think that it's actually like a righteous thing to figure this out on his own, then I got him. Because then he'll make a mistake, and instead of turning to Christ in faith unto repentance, he will turn unto Shaden to fix it, so that he can then turn to Jesus to say, look what I did, I fixed it. And so in that gap, when you make a mistake, shame becomes the mechanism that is an illusion of paying for the mistake you made. So this brings up the third nuance of shame, which I call shaming with an ing. So shaming is the act of degrading, punishing, and beating yourself up for the sole purpose of paying a price of a mistake you made. Let that sink in. Or hit the 15-second back button. Shaming is what every person does almost daily. And until you truly see it and make it a non-negotiable, which means you just don't get to do that anymore, and if it will happen over and over. The more unaware you are of it, the more it's happening. So shaming that, so that's that third nuance. Now we have emotion, then we have this lens that we put on of this state of being of shame. Like this is how I function, this is how I view things. So therefore, when I make a mistake, I will punish myself through the thought process of shaming. In order to falsely atone, I say falsely, I'll just say it, in an attempt to atone for the mistake I made and quote unquote pay for it, so that I can perhaps turn to God and say, look what I did. I made up for it. And I took it out of I tried to withdraw it out of the infinite bank account I have of worth. So I actually made myself worth less through the way that I viewed myself in an attempt to pay for that thing. That is shaming. And the world Satan has taken this conversation that I think is amazing. About 15 years ago, Brene Brown really broke this conversation about shame and vulnerability, and that vulnerability is the antithesis to it. It's the answer. But in its nuance, I guess in its ambiguous state of, well, what does shame really mean? Like, are you just talking about the emotion? Are you talking about a state of being? Or are you talking about shaming, which is like a thought process? It's a way to think. Those are separate. And so the world, most people have only seen shame, especially men. First off, men don't even look at their shame, by the way, because you hide like crazy. So if this podcast is opening this up to you, that's why I've built this cohort of men, because you doing this in isolation is a shameful act in and of itself. Trying to beat pornography by yourself is because you're shame. So you're still using shame in your loneliness to try to beat pornography. It won't work. I promise. Like you have to have some help. And I'm just here to say, I got you. Let's do this. Right. So I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah. So shame. So we have to become so aware of what's going on. Oh yeah, that's right. So Brene Brown. So I think, so what Satan's done is says, okay, shame is, he's put this simple black and white thinking on it that like shame is bad. So never, it's almost like the goal in life is to not feel shame. It's like, really? Like as a parent, you're telling me that you truly don't want your kid, if they did something really, really bad, like if your kid came home, the principal calls you and the principal's like, hey, we need to talk. It turns out we have multiple parents here and multiple children here saying that your son has been bullying people and this is the evidence, and it's ... and here's all these things that your son has done. You're telling me that when he comes into accountability with that you wouldn't want him to experience a little bit of shame emotionally? Come on. If you are, you need to take a look at it. Now, dads, your job is to avoid using the way you think about you. This is also the problem, is when you shame yourself, so that's shaming. When you're used to shaming, guess what's going to happen with your son? You will treat him the way you treat yourself. So then you will end up shaming him. When he's already feeling the emotion that he probably needs to feel, you are the one that's actually infiltrating and creating the belief or the trait or lens of shame through the way that you are shaming him. And the only way to change it is by changing yourself. And changing yourself means you stop doing the thing that keeps creating so much shame. And that's pornography. You know it. If I said, what's created the most shame for you in your life? Most men, it's the secret of pornography, because it's that common. It's that common, and we know it. Pornography has this. It has this. What's the word, right? The stigma to it that someone could be an alcoholic, someone could struggle with drugs, they could struggle with obesity, they could struggle with sugar, they could struggle with all sorts of other things with food, and they could talk about it at church. They would talk about it with people. And yeah, there's a little bit of shame, but pornography, no way. That's a problem. And I tell men all the time, one way you can measure where you are in your recovery with pornography is if you could talk about it like eating a Snickers bar. And wives, the same way. Can it become a topic that's we've worked through so much of the shame of it that it's actually just become a topic in and of itself that we can just have and come out at any time? It's like, wow, that's some seriously cool work. Because shame really does result in so much self-hate when you are falsely atoning for so long. And most of you listening, I hope this is teaching you something extremely eye-opening. And women, if you're only listening to this and your husband isn't listening to this, know that's what's happening. You have to know that. Like your husband's going through this self-harming. He's not cutting per se, but he's cutting himself with his words. And Satan is doing it too. And I would actually just say Satan's doing it and he's listening to it. And now it's become his own head voice, and it's all jam-packed into one entity. And so we have to change this. So that's my hope in liberating you today in this podcast, is that I hope the awareness of shame in and of itself can be liberating, and that you can actually come to a greater understanding about the mechanism of shame itself, that shame in and of itself isn't just all bad. Shaming, yes, 100%. Non-negotiable. Worth is something that was given to us. Christ suffered to pay for you. and it's an infinite price he paid. So therefore, if he bought your worth with his blood, your worth isn't even yours. It's not even yours. So the act of attempting to degrade your worth is as insane as it gets. It's like it's an attempt to decrease what you think the pull of gravity is. You can't change gravity 1 ounce. I don't know. It's not an ounce, obviously. I don't know how you measure gravity, but you can't change it. You can try. It's going to mess you up. So attempting to change your worth verbally in your mind in an attempt to pay for a sin, it's going to mess you up. Not to mention the viral spiral it puts you in of porn being this vicious 2-cycle engine of, well, porn is what creates shame, but then I cope with my shame through pornography. It's like, man, no wonder you're stuck. So then you keep trying to fix pornography your whole life, and you have spent 0 hours or very little time trying to actually figure out what to do with shame. And that's why you stay stuck. That's why you stay trapped. And I'm here to tell you there's a way out. And vulnerability, as much as men hate that word, it's the way out. Vulnerability is the act of allowing yourself to be rejected. It's the act of allowing yourself to be seen enough that somebody actually could judge you. That's vulnerability. And in that unveiling of yourself, in that uncovering of yourself, good people like me and other people that hopefully you can have in your life can keep that unveiling and that uncovering safe. And they can hear it and they can love you with it and start moving through it. But that decision to show up and lean into that is very difficult. It's going to terrify you, but you think you're tough. So if you're tough, then do tough things. But most guys who think they're tough actually are just tough. They're just busy hiding so much that toughness has become the guard they hide behind. So where I wanted to finish, it might not feel like it's the most, this isn't like the end all be all, but I had a conversation with a guy this last week or a couple weeks ago or something. And I referenced my podcast earlier that I did long time ago about it's unfortunate. And if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. But there's a phrase that a good friend of mine used once on a fishing outing, and he spilled the entire tackle box in front of me. I was like 15 or so. And I remember thinking, man, if my dad did that, like there would have been some words. And he pulled this tackle box out of the boat. It rips open, and he looked at me and he said, "That's unfortunate." I mean, it was like a 6-story tackle box. This thing was huge, and it went everywhere. And he just looked at me and said, "That's unfortunate." And I that always stuck with me, like what a powerful example. And so a little challenge I want to give you is if you can just be a little more aware of when things go wrong in your life and you turn to those, like, you're such an idiot, like, and you get into that shaming mentality so quickly. You start calling yourself names. I say you start shoulding on yourself, where you're like, I should have known that. I shouldn't be so bad. I shouldn't be whatever. Try to just for a second, when you make mistakes, like, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. And then from that point, be accountable. And that's a whole new topic in and of itself. But I want you to see, the more heavily you struggle with shame, the less accountability you will exhibit in your life. Shame nullifies accountability. You can't be super ashamed and be accountable at the same time. It doesn't really work that way. Like, the more and more you start to become accountable, you'll start to see that shame starts to come down, and healthy guilt starts to replace it, but also just like lessons and learning. And when you account for a mistake, you automatically begin a process of learning from it, and learning from it creates hope. Learning from it actually creates meaning, The only way to have meaning in anything in our lives is if we learn from it. Well, shame doesn't take any time for learning because it's too busy punishing. And that in of itself, guys, explains so much of your life. And it explains why you treat loved ones the way you do when you really get pushed to your brink. You've got to get in touch with this, and we at Motyv are here to help, but I hope you reach out. I only have 10 spots. A couple of them are already being looked at. 10 spots. There's going to be a lot included. And I'm not just saying, I didn't do this podcast just to pitch that, I promise. But it is where I'm going, because therapy works one-on-one and it's good. But when it comes to truly transforming your life, there's got to be a step up. There's got to be a more serious focus. And that includes financially. That includes learning a lot. If I just taught everything I know that I'm going to teach all of these men, it would take a while. And so you can't, paying for that in therapy, you're missing out on the therapy because all I'm doing is educating you. And so it's just taking guys forever. It's taking them so long to try to figure this out. And I'm just done with it. I want guys to have this amazing Lamborghini experience of having the best opportunity they can in a faster, better way to break this. And it's going to happen. So reach out, shaden@motyv.com, or call us at 435-315-2520. And we'll set up a conversation so we can see if this is a good fit for you. But I hope this taught you, right? I hope this, and if you're listening to this like 6 months from now or whatever, just know this is going to be an ongoing thing. So you can always get in touch with us and figure it out. But I hope this touched you today. I hope it liberates you in that the awareness of it alone can begin more of a liberating process. And there's many other things to learn about shame, but just know that your Savior's way and that God's way is never about shaming you. And that is not who they are. And many of you have a lens, or you look at God through the same lens. And it's why you're distant from them. That's why you struggle to connect with them, because you think they treat you like your dad taught you or treated you. And it's just not how they are. And so hope you can feel that a little bit and lean into that and liberate your life. So we'll talk to you guys later.